Hi, everybody. We're live. I'm Elizabeth Mathern, Kuck, Baxter Immigration, South Georgia office. We are going to talk about several things today. I'm going to answer your questions live. We give people a few minutes to join. Today is November 4th, 2021. We are going to talk about the latest with travel restrictions, and there's some interesting cases going on. I want to talk in detail a little bit about the Mendez Rojas decision, which is actually a case from years ago, but it may be something that is interesting. Deadline for filing under that settlement agreement is coming up next year. So I want to make sure it's on your radar and people know that if they could potentially be a class member, that they reach out for some help, because now would be the time to do it. The settlement requires that people must notify the government that they're a class member by April of 2022. So that's 2021's almost over. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So we'll talk about that. We will talk about, let's see, what else do I have? Oh, of course, we're waiting to see what happens with Plan C of the immigration reconciliation proposal. Next stop is allegedly the parliamentarian. I think everybody is growing wary of that process and whether she's going to even really give it a fair chance. Remember that the parliamentarian is a former ICE attorney. She worked at an immigration court as a government attorney in deportation proceedings at a detention center. So I think that snapshot of time in her career may or may not be influencing her decision making on this. I saw Senator Mendez, I think, quoted a few minutes ago on Twitter saying he didn't necessarily think that that was biasing her against the decisions to include immigration in the reconciliation. But I mean, you know, everybody's life experiences play into sort of how they decision make, which brings us to the point that this is not the parliamentarian is not an elected official. So, and the Senate doesn't necessarily have to abide by her thought process. So anyway, okay, we are going to just talk about some updates. Feel free to post questions. Feel free to put comments. Tell me hi. Tell me where you're watching from. That's always nice. Sometimes I feel like I'm just, you know, in this room with this brick wall talking to myself. But so the more you can let me know you're out there, the better I feel on this end of things. Okay, so let's jump in and talk a little bit about, hi, Gerald. Okay, Gerald says he's hoping for good news for a spouse that has a 9C. If she turns herself in, been here for more than 20. It would be, I agree with you, Gerald. It would be really, really nice if that was just gotten rid of. There are a lot of people who really have no criminal history, had no prior knowledge that leaving multiple times would create basically, like, we call it the permanent bar. Because there isn't a waiver, you have to actually wait outside of the country for that time to pass, which, you know, is extremely difficult. It breaks up families and all of that. So I am right there with you. That is an abomination that just needs to go. Let's just scratch that one out. Red line that. All right. Well, thank you for watching, Gerald, and thank you for hanging in there. I don't know. The only thing that may help people with a permanent bar that they're talking about is this parole idea. So that would be something potentially that's available for anyone in the U.S. that doesn't have maybe certain criminal convictions, has been here since a certain date, and they would get like a temporary permission with a work permit, which allows people to get social security number and a driver's license. So that's huge for a lot of people. Of course, that is not what we were hoping for, but let's see if the Democrats can even get that done. I am the eternal optimist, but it's hard to stay optimistic the way things have been going with them in this reconciliation process. So as many of you may know, President Biden announced that he was replacing the country-by-country pandemic-related air travel restrictions with a vaccine requirement. So as of November 8th, that is next, is that Monday? Anybody that's a non-citizen, non-immigrant, hold on. Yeah, you have to be vaccinated, basically. Now, there are certain waivers if the country that the person's coming from. Hi, Glenn. Thank you for writing. I think I did cover what I know as far as a few minutes ago is going on with the immigration bill in the reconciliation. Not much. If you guys are watching, looking at Twitter and watching me, and you have any updates, feel free to post. Didn't look like there was any movement to me. So right now, fully vaccinated individuals are going to be allowed to enter. There are going to be exceptions if the vaccine's not readily available where the person's coming from. Potentially, they could like waive that requirement. But I read that there was going to be a requirement that those people get vaccinated upon entry to the U.S. where the vaccine is more readily available. That seems fairly straightforward. There was a big victory. I'm not sure if I didn't have a chance to watch Mr. Kuck's Facebook Live yesterday. I was going to talk about the H-1B settlement, but let me take Ainoa's. Is that right? Ainoa Munoz. Thank you for asking a question. Welcome. And any updates on Daca? No updates on Daca at this moment that I know of. For any of you who aren't clear on where Daca is right now, it's still in the situation where we have an injunction. So USCIS is accepting and processing Daca renewals. They are accepting but not processing initial filings. They are accepting and processing advanced parole on current Daca holders. So initial filers are still on hold. And yeah, that's all we've heard. Remember that the Biden administration recently created a regulation related to codifying Daca, and it's now in the notice and comment period, which I think goes until November 29th. So that's the latest I know of regarding Daca. Hang tight for that period to pass. Unfortunately, when I read the regulation, I didn't see any expansion whatsoever. It was exactly the same as what had been released under the Obama administration by executive order. So I was hoping that, maybe there would be a slight expansion. You're very, very welcome. Thank you for asking question. Folks, if you're just joining us, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Mathern. As you can see on the screen, I am in the South Georgia office, which is in Adel, Georgia, halfway between Tifton and Valdosta. I am going to put, here we go, let's see, put my little ticker up. You can call me at 229-472-5775. So I'm right off I-75. I'm almost to the Florida border. The next exit down from us shows a big sign that says we're 37 miles from the Florida border. So we're really close to North Florida, and we take cases from anywhere in the U.S. We're really anywhere in the world. We're more than happy to help you. You know, these days, remote technology and everything makes all of that very accessible. Okay, so let's talk quickly about a case that our firm was involved in winning. It's called Madkudu Inc., the USCIS, and that was related to USCIS denying H-1B petitions for market research analysts. So, and saying that that was not a specialty occupation. So a settlement was reached, and class members have until April 26th, 2022 to submit a request to reopen their denials. USCIS is supposed to also release some guidance, I think. I don't think it's been released. So if you think that might apply to you and you want to see if you're a class member or you're sure you're a class member, you got a denial, why don't you give us a call and make sure that you don't sleep on your rights if you think that that applies to you as a company who filed for some people, or if you were perhaps a market analyst and market research analyst, and that might apply to you. So might be a good thing to do to reach out and double check. All right, let's see. Also, USCIS offered expanded guidance regarding Liberian refugee information fairness application, which we're calling LRIF. That window closes in a month and a couple of weeks. So December 20th, 2021 is the last day for Liberian nationals or their qualifying family members to apply for relief, which is adjustment of status. It's just straight a green card application. There doesn't have to be an underlying petition or an underlying qualifying relative. It's actually a really amazing application. If you are a Liberian national or a relative of a Liberian national, and you haven't, this is the first you're hearing of it, reach out, okay? Make sure that you have researched whether or not you're eligible for this, because that window is closing in, and it's an amazing application. But the ones that we have been doing, USCIS has been issuing these weird requests for evidence, and as they do, and so they released additional guidance related to if you don't have certain documents, this is what we'll accept. That policy update was done on October 29th. So it was last week. It's on the USCIS website. It also was incorporated into the policy manual. So it's right there. And make sure that you check it out. I guess it's good information. It's always frustrating when a USCIS makes things more difficult than they even need to be, and then creates like an explanation of how you can jump through their hoops, you know, but that's just the world we work in. All right. Whiplash again with what's called the MPP program, or the, program for people to apply for asylum outside of the U.S. at the southern border. Whiplash is, we're hearing that it was off, now it's on, then it was on, now it's off again. So where we are with that is allegedly the Biden administration has decided to trash can that program yet again and allow people to file for asylum within the U.S. We'll see how that plays out. You know, these policies are discussed and sort of mentioned in the news in real isolation, like kind of in a vacuum, like, oh, it's just this little program. But the ripples of how it impacts people being processed at the border, how it impacts people being able to assert their rights to certain applications, and how the detention centers are working. is all interconnected and intertwined. So we'll see on the ground how things actually go. I'll keep you posted on that, what I hear regarding that. And then USCIS, or I'm sorry, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has announced officially that they will recognize certain areas as protected from immigration raids, what we colloquially call raids. So, you know, you may have heard about how at certain points in the past, immigration authorities would show up at a job site and ask everybody to show their IDs, or show up at a factory or a plant. There was a period of time under the Obama administration that they were going outside of schools. So, you know, kids that were unaccompanied minors would age out and they would go look for them outside of their schools and things like that. I mean, it's just unconscionable stuff. But in this statement, which I guess is a memorandum, which has some legally binding value, not a ton, but they mentioned that protected areas could include or would include schools, medical and mental health care facilities, places of worship, religious study, where children live, where children gather, so maybe like playgrounds, social service facilities, places where disaster and emergency services are provided, funerals, weddings, ongoing parades, demonstrations, and rallies would be protected areas and not subject to enforcement activity, which also known as raids. So that's pretty much it for what's the latest news just in general going on in immigration law. Another thing that I was planning, let me double check and see if we have any questions, because I've got that going. That changes what I can see. Okay, so no other questions. If you're just joining and you want to ask a question, feel free. Or if you've been waiting for me to stop talking and ask for questions, feel free to post questions, or even just say hi and let me know where you're watching from. That's always fun. So I'm going to talk now, if there's no other question, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mendez Rojas settlement agreement and who needs to be aware of it and who needs to make sure that they file some sort of action, or sorry, some sort of like documentation to comply with this settlement. So for those of you who don't know, when people enter the US, maybe they are walking through the desert or the river, or maybe they go up to a checkpoint and they ask for protection from the fear that they're experiencing in their home country or persecution that they're experiencing in their home country. They are processed and sometimes held in detention centers, given a credible fear interview. Sometimes they're just processed for release without really, or sometimes they're unaccompanied minors and they're matched with like a family member and they're released to a family member without much instruction on what they need to do next. And it's very difficult. Pancho, I'll answer your question about Daca in just a second. It's very difficult for people brand new to the U.S. legal system to navigate what to do next, or to even know that there's certain pretty severe limitations on when you need to file certain applications. And one of those applications with a severe limitation is asylum. You're supposed to file your asylum application within the first year of entering the U.S. If you don't, you have to have a really, really good reason for why you were not able to. Extremely difficult or challenging circumstances. I think like you're in a coma or something, you know, and there were no family members who could sort of act on your behalf, and you were not able to retain legal services before you went into a coma. I mean, it's a really high standard to try to prove that you had exceptional circumstances. So there are two main groups of people that need to make sure they do something before the deadline. And those people are a Class A and a Class B. Before I go into that, let me just answer Pancho's question real quick. What will happen with Daca? Okay, so we're talking about the Mendez Rojas Settlement decision, which affects like asylum seekers. Daca is for people who were brought here when they were young, under a certain age, by a certain date, without certain disqualifying criminal convictions, and without status on a certain date. So right now, DACA's just in a holding pattern. I think, you know, if you're asking Pancho and Myra what will happen next or what we expect to happen soon, I expect that the notice and comment period will expire. You know, we'll have gone through the opportunity for people to give any notice and comment regarding the DACA regulation, and that it will go into effect. That will be an attempt to shore it up. I also anticipate that the court in Texas will make a ruling on whether they think that the executive order done by Biden was effective or not, or whether it violated the law somehow, like it went beyond his authority as the president. What's going to be interesting to see is if they find that it was the executive order was outside of his authority and the regulation is in the books. Do all of the people with current DACA that filed under the Obama executive order need to refile under the regulation? That would be ridiculous. It would be procedurally like extra, unnecessarily extra. But in this immigration world, nothing really surprises me. So just stay tuned, keep watching, and we'll keep you updated. The attempt to shore things up through the regulation is an interesting idea, but it doesn't go back in time, right? Like, it doesn't put us in a time machine and go back to the date that President Obama issued that executive order. So kind of, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to play out how they are presenting it, that it just fixes everything. I don't think it does. So I would love to be wrong, though. So you're very, very welcome. We will keep watching that. Okay, so I was talking about the Mendez Rojas settlement. I know it's not exciting and probably doesn't apply to a ton of people, but I just want to make sure that I put it out there in case it does apply to anybody who's watching, or anybody that you think, like, you're listening to the classes and you think, oh, that might be so-and-so. I mean, if we can help one person not miss their rights, their ability to keep their rights, then that it was worth it. So the two classes, Class A is people who were encountered by the government, which is DHS, upon arrival or within 14 days of entering without permission, that they were released by DHS after they had a positive credible fear finding, and they did not receive notice that they needed to file an asylum claim within 1 year. They could have not filed an asylum claim at all, and they could have filed their asylum claim but did it after 1 year when they finally figured out that that's when they needed to file it. So those people, if they meet those qualifications, would be under Class A, and they would need to submit an asylum application, if they haven't done it already, with some sort of documentation that they should be considered under Class A of the Mendez Rojas Settlement. Or if they've already filed their asylum application, then they need to submit the request that they're considered under this settlement to the authority with which the asylum case is still pending. Okay? Now, Class A can be divided into two parts, which is removal proceedings and non-removal proceedings. So that's why I said send it wherever the thing is pending, if you've got something pending. All right. Class B is people who were encountered by DHS upon arrival or within 14 days of arrival, expressed a fear of returning to their home country, and were released by DHS with the issuance of an NTA. That means here's your notice, you can go to court. A lot of times those notice to appears that are given to people don't even have a date and a time, right? Which is something else you've heard us talk about. That's a whole nother case. So those people are just told, oh, you'll get a court date in the mail or go to court on this date and then it gets canceled or whatever. There are people who were released and still, I mean, for years and still haven't had an actual court date. So those people, if you haven't been in front of a judge or you haven't sought out an attorney because you don't have a court date, you know, right now, or an attorney tells you, oh, wait till you have court. Those people may not even know that they're eligible for asylum or they had to file asylum within the first year that they came here. So those people, obviously, you also have to make the showing that you didn't get notice of the 1 year filing deadline. And you've either not filed anything because you didn't know, or you have filed something, but it was 1 year after you arrived. And then, of course, that's divided into two separate parts, in removal proceedings and not in removal proceedings. So the deadline for you, if this applies to you, you must file an application for asylum on or before April 22nd, 2022. So 4/22/2022. And that's the main takeaway, right? If you think at all that this could apply to you, you need to reach out and make sure that you're not sleeping on your rights. And if you are unsure if you qualify for asylum, maybe you had a fear, you're not so sure if, maybe it's been years and you're not so sure if that fear still exists or it's gotten worse and you just didn't know what to do. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to help you evaluate the strength of your case, get the documentation filed to make sure that you are claiming your spot as a class member under Mendez Rojas. Please don't sleep on your rights, folks. It's very, very important. And make sure to share this with anyone who you think could help. It could help. All right. I know someone who's got virtual. This definitely happens. I think there's even a culture of from what I understand, there's even a culture of sexual abuse within the Border Protection Office. So it doesn't surprise me at all, Gerald, that you heard someone have this situation. It's really, really sad and awful. And I'm sorry that happened to her. I hope that she's able to get some support in working through that, because that's a really awful, awful abuse of power. And it's just disgusting. So, okay, folks. So that's pretty much all I had to talk about with you guys today. Thank you so much for everybody who joined. Thanks for the questions. Like I said, if you think any of this information would be helpful to somebody, please feel free to share it. Share it directly, share it on your page. Like and follow our page so that you hear when we do our immigration updates. We do them almost every day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You can also follow us on Twitter, YouTube, all the places. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at EL_Matherne, MATHERNE. And Mr. Kuck is very active on Twitter. He is it's at CKUCK. That is Mr. Kuck's Twitter handle. And that's where you'll find all the updates on, the litigation stuff that we've got pending. All right. Well, I think that's it for me. I will see you all next Thursday. I hope you have a great weekend. And as we wrap up 2021, I hope you're all wrapping it up with prosperity, love, all of that good stuff. All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.